as we wrap up Child Protection Week today, we look into parenting styles geared towards building and fostering a child's self-esteem. The Parent Center aims to put the spotlight on the link between self-esteem in early childhood and mental health. The parent training specialists point out that nurturing children's self-esteem from a young age is said to be one of the most critical parts of developing mentally healthy adults. Now on Zoom, we are joined to discuss this further. We're joined by Jonathan Hoffenberg, PACE's manager at the Parent Center. Jonathan, a very good morning to you. A warm welcome to Morning Live. I mean, first, let's start with how do you, build a child's self-esteem? You know, what is the link between self-esteem in early childhood and developing more happy adults?
Well, can I just say the last person that was on, that wonderful gospel singer, who was a preschool teacher, she talked about the importance of process, of being aware of what you do. And really, that is the heart of parenting, that it isn't necessarily about the end goal. And obviously, the end goal is important, that we want healthy, resilient children that can develop into adults that can move and change and learn from their mistakes. But it's about being conscious of the process as you're going along. And the thing about self-esteem is about your self-image. It's about your accomplishments and capabilities. It's literally your sense of self-worth and self-opinion. And children these days are very different from children that have been before, in that they're growing up in a social media space where everything around them is, I wouldn't say a false portrayal, but it's a portrayal where everything is good, where the people are super cool, where the TikTok videos, are fantastic. And it gives a child often a false sense of high expectations and that everybody else is doing okay, whilst, let's say, inside, maybe they're not feeling okay. And one of the things that we've seen from COVID is COVID had a huge knock-on effect of all relationships, but especially with teens, especially with children. The rate of teen mental health, of teen suicide has dramatically increased. And so we're really reaching out and appealing to parents to look at their children with a degree of softness, because parenting is about getting two things right. It's about trying to be warm and enabling, but at the same time setting boundaries. So it's not about being a pushover. You can't be what is known as a permissive parent, someone that lets anything go, because then your children become, far too kind of self-centered. But at the same time, those old authoritarian styles that the fact that across the board, a lot of our parents are still holding on to the old models of being very strong disciplinarians doesn't really work anymore. And there's very strong evidence to back that up.
And I think that is the biggest struggle we have as parents at the moment. Those of us who grew up with very strict parents, is that we're battling to find the balance between not being too strict, because we know the consequences of growing up under a strict parent, and also the consequences of not being an easy parent, a walkover parent. How do you find the balance as a parent? How do you strike that balance?
Well, three things. One, show your child that you're struggling. Be honest and let them see when things go well for you, but when things don't go well for you, don't hide your emotions from your child, because children invariably know what's going on. They don't know the context. So they know that mom and dad are angry, or they know that mom and dad are sad, but they don't know why. And if you're saying, I had a really frustrating day at work, there's a colleague that I'm really struggling to get on with. And what you're showing to your child is that it's okay to have problems. And this is the second thing, that allow for room for mistakes. A good parent creates boundaries, but those boundaries have to be an area in which a child can then develop freely and can make mistakes, because we learn from our mistakes. And then third, it's about being reasonable with yourself and reasonable with your child, and setting reasonable goals. And if, for example, your child is struggling at school, it's okay to say, well, I'm disappointed with your performance, but I'd urge parents not to say, I'm disappointed in you.
Okay.
When we work with parents, there's a difference between behavior and how I express behavior. So if I'm feeling anger, there's nothing necessarily wrong with anger. It's how we express our anger. And if we bottle our emotions up inside, invariably, it's like when you've made home-style ginger beer, and if you leave it there too long, the yeasts build up and the bottle ends up popping. And emotions are a lot like that. We need to be able to express ourselves. But if you can model, if you can show your children the correct way of dealing with your emotions, and if you can help guide them by going, I can see that you're frustrated, but maybe throwing stones at that window because you failed that maths test wasn't the best idea, and we need to go to our neighbor and apologize, and we need to, maybe you need to do some work at their house so that you can replace their windows. So it's about dealing with whatever comes along, but in a positive, proactive way.
And how are children who have good self-esteem better equipped to handle tough situations or issues in life in general?
Well, for one thing, they know that life is full of challenges, and so they roll with the punches, what is known as resilience. For another thing, they're not looking for external validation. They're not looking for other people to tell them that they're okay. They know that they're okay themselves. And then lastly, they've got realistic expectations and good communication skills. And they also understand that this world is made of lots of different people. And I think that's one thing that we, as South Africans and across the world, we're really struggling with. That if all of us speak the same language, go to the same church, vote the same political party, things are kind of okay. But as soon as there's diversity in the mix, communities struggle. And so if you're raising your children with this notion that difference is okay, that challenges are okay, that we talk about things that are facing us, they're able to encounter and process and be tolerant to the changes that are around them.
And one of the other things that I think most mothers, for instance, also struggle with is, trying to overprotect your child, almost like you want to protect them from every single thing that, disappointment, you want to overcompensate. Do you find that that's true as well? I was watching a video of a parent who was saying mothers, specifically those who have sons and who are single mothers, usually overcompensate for their sons, trying to, make up for that absent father. Are you finding that that is also the case where parents overcompensate?
Oh, very much. And we're going through an interesting period with fatherhood right now, in that as a society, and we're in the 16 days of activism right now. So we've got to acknowledge that men are the main culprit when it comes to gender-based violence. And we have a society that is very violent, and a lot of that violence is because of men. But at the same time, men play a very important role as fathers. And so you'll often have a situation where single moms are literally split inside. There's part of them that loves their sons, but there's part of them that is fearful of the masculine in a sense. And that's something that your son can kind of pick up. But more importantly, what you're doing is you're creating young men who view their mums as this complete perfection. And no other woman is ever going to compete with your mother. So how is your child going to be able to leave home? And there's a lovely term that's currently in a lot of the European countries where you've got men in their 30s and 40s and they're not leaving home because, like in Italy, why should I leave home when mum makes the best food, she looks after me? It's a term called failure to launch, failure to drive.
All right, Jonathan.
So unfortunately, you want your children to move on.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I want my kids out of my house as soon as they're old enough. Jonathan, thank you so much for talking to us. Jonathan Hoffenberg, such an interesting conversation. PACE's manager at the Parent Center on how building self-esteem in childhood produces mentally healthy adults.